On January 20th, 2021, I posted a video called Why Microsoft Refuses to Launch Windows 11. For the first couple of months, there was a plethora of comments suggesting that my video was useless, as I was apparently stating the obvious. Microsoft had already announced that Windows 10 would be the last version of Windows years ago, so this was nothing new. Over the last month though, the video has been flooded with new comments. This did not age well. This aged like fine milk. This aged well. 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 There's a few hundred comments within just the last week nailing down the point that the video didn't age well. So let's just make it official. The video aged like milk. With that being said though, Microsoft did initially suggest that Windows 10 would be the last numerical version, and just a couple of months ago, people were convinced that my video was just stating the obvious. So, what changed for Microsoft and where did my reasoning go wrong? In the last video, I outlined 4 major reasons for why Microsoft refused to launch Windows 11. So, let's go through each of those reasons and discuss the merits and flaws with each argument, starting with resources. Developing a new Windows operating system is not cheap by any means. We don't exactly know how much it costs Microsoft to develop a new Windows, but some simple math would suggest that it runs them tens of billions. For instance, let's say that Microsoft uses 10,000 engineers for 5 years to develop Windows 11 from start to finish. Glassdoor suggests that the average base pay for a software engineer at Microsoft is between $83,000 and $178,000. The team working on the latest operating system, though, will likely be the best of the best. So, we'll estimate on the higher end of the spectrum and call it $150K per year. Add in a $30K cash bonus and a $50K stock bonus, and we get a total of $230,000 per engineer in terms of compensation. If we add in $70,000 to account for office space, laptops, phones, airplane tickets, hotels, and other operational expenses, we get a total of $300,000 per engineer. Spreading that over 10,000 engineers over 5 years, we get a total of $15 billion to develop Windows 11. Microsoft also has tons of expenses other than just development, such as marketing, providing support, forming new licensing deals, and the opportunity cost of using that much manpower on Windows development. Clearly, creating a new Windows is extremely expensive, and that's still true today. However, something to also consider is that Microsoft is a significantly larger company today. In the early 2010s, when Microsoft was developing Windows 8 and 10 and decided to end it with Windows 10, Microsoft stock was hovering between $25 and $30 per share. Today, Microsoft stock stands at $265 per share, and Microsoft just surpassed a market cap of $2 trillion. Not to mention, Microsoft is now holding $135.8 billion in cash. Fun fact, if Bill Gates never sold any of his Microsoft stock, he would nearly be a trillionaire today with a net worth of $900 billion. Anyway, something else to consider is that Microsoft was net profiting a little over $10 billion per year in 2015. So, developing a new Windows would require that they invest 2 years worth of their net income. Today, however, Microsoft is net profiting nearly $60 billion per year. So, developing Windows today would only require about 4 months of their income, meaning that Microsoft can gamble with new Windows and they won't really be hurt financially. Moving on, my second point in the last video was that Microsoft had no financial incentive to launch a new Windows. Here's the thing, no one buys standalone Windows licenses anymore. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the practice of buying a new license and upgrading your OS was decently common, but that's no longer the case. You either pirate the latest version online, or you wait till you buy a new computer to get it bundled with the new computer. Also, 99% of the population is not going to buy a new computer just to get the latest OS, especially when the changes are more incremental than ever before. Microsoft realized this years ago. That's why they basically made Windows 10 free for consumers. They were like, we know you're not gonna buy a license from us, so instead of downloading the OS from a sketchy website and potentially getting a virus, just download it from our website. Nowadays, virtually all of the revenue from Windows comes from computer manufacturers and businesses/schools who have to license it from Microsoft. And the revenue from these groups isn't going to change just because Microsoft launches a new Windows. Global computer sales aren't really going to change because of a new Windows, so Microsoft would get the same revenue from computer manufacturers. Meanwhile, businesses and schools are going to cycle through computers at the same rate as always, so there's no change there either. Considering this, not only would a new Windows cost Microsoft a lot of money, but it wouldn't even increase their overall revenue. This is actually still true, but what we have to consider is that there are other benefits aside from just financial benefits, specifically branding benefits. Windows 8 and 10 weren't received too well by the public. With Windows 8, Microsoft dropped the original Start menu and they added some weird tile thing, and that alone was enough to ruin the entire OS for many. When Windows 10 was released, a lot of the older software stopped working, and Microsoft started to track our activities and internet habits more than ever before. Let's also not forget the constant updates, which are often more detrimental than helpful. Just a few weeks ago, my Ethernet driver stopped working after a Windows 10 update. As you already know, the launch of Windows 8 and 10 were not smooth by any means, and they arguably hurt the reputation of Microsoft and Windows. With Windows 11, Microsoft is looking to change its perception with what is hopefully a super smooth transition. So, though Microsoft still doesn't have a financial incentive to launch Windows 11, they do have a branding incentive. Next up, my third argument was that Microsoft had far larger opportunities to spend their resources and efforts on, as opposed to just Windows and Microsoft Office. Microsoft basically stalled after the dot-com crash in 2000. Between 2000 and 2014, the company, as well as the stock, just went sideways. While it's true that tech companies were vastly overvalued in the late 1990s, like they are today, the tech industry itself was still rapidly growing. Though companies like Amazon and Nvidia were crushed by the dot-com crash, they recovered extremely quickly and destroyed the dot-com highs by the end of the decade. Meanwhile, we had a group of laggard tech companies that included companies like Intel, Cisco, and of course, Microsoft. Intel and Cisco haven't surpassed their dot-com highs even today after 21 years. So it was clear which companies were innovating and pushing forward technology and which companies were just stalling. Unfortunately, Microsoft was one of these stalling companies, and they couldn't just keep trying the same thing over and over again, as that clearly didn't work. They had already missed out on the smartphone market and the internet to up-and-coming startups such as Amazon and Google. So it was time to ditch their old ways and search for new opportunities to grow. Fortunately for Microsoft, their new CEO, Satya Nadella, had just the solution: cloud computing services. Google and Apple already had a pretty good grasp on the consumer cloud market, with Google Drive and iCloud, which were extremely competitive. On the business side though, there was still a lot of room to grow, and there was only one major competitor, which was Amazon Web Services, who was extremely expensive. Microsoft believed that trying to leverage Business Cloud was far more valuable than continuously developing Windows. So they put Windows development on the back burner and went all in on cloud. According to Microsoft's website, their cloud service, Azure, is 5 times cheaper than Amazon's AWS. AWS is still arguably the most dominant player, as they boast the best reliability and service. However, Azure was an extremely attractive option for businesses who were looking for a cheaper alternative, and this allowed Microsoft to break out of 14 years of stagnation and grow exponentially over the last 7 years. In the early days of Azure in 2014 and 2015, Microsoft refused to focus on creating a new Windows. But now that Azure has gotten a strong footing within the cloud industry, Microsoft is able to divert some of their focus back onto Windows and bring us Windows 11. And that brings me on to my final point, which was that Microsoft is no longer a consumer business. While it's true that virtually all of the end users of Windows and Microsoft Office are everyday people, basically all of the revenue for Microsoft comes from business-to-business transactions. Computer manufacturers, businesses, and schools are the ones buying Windows licenses. Employers and schools are the ones paying for Microsoft Office subscriptions. And businesses and schools are the ones buying Azure Cloud services. So Microsoft is indeed more of a commercial business rather than a consumer business today. But then, why are they refocusing on the consumer side of their business? At first glance, the move may seem confusing, but if we look a bit deeper, it's actually super clear. The reason is Apple. Over the last couple of years, Apple has been going through their own transition to reduce their dependence on the iPhone. One of these efforts has been increasing the market share of Mac computers. Last year, they ditched Intel chips in favor of their own M1 chips. This move wasn't simply to reduce the reliance on Intel though. This move was designed to help Macs match the framework of iOS and attract mobile developers to Mac. One of the primary reasons for the success of the iPhone is its UI, but Apple can't be solely credited with the iPhone UI. I mean, how long do you spend scrolling through your home screen and using stock apps? The vast majority of your time is spent using third-party apps, and the reason the apps work so well is because of Apple's developer-friendly architecture that is tailored to their various devices. So, the success of the iPhone is actually because of both Apple and third-party developers. In fact, the App Store accounts for the largest portion of Apple's profit from the iPhone. As a result, Apple is trying to expand its success to Macs as well with the M1. This shift already seems to have made a noticeable difference. In Q1 of 2020, Apple's market share was 5.8%. In Q1 of 2021, however, their market share was 8%. Now, it's not like macOS is about to overtake Windows, but Microsoft doesn't want to miss out on the next big ecosystem. Right now, computers don't really have a central app store where you can download everything. You have to download programs one by one from their websites. Apple is looking to change this, and Microsoft doesn't want to be left behind. And this perfectly explains their unexpected decision to bring Android apps to Windows 11. They're even open to Steam being part of the Windows 11 App Store. Microsoft is also letting developers keep 100% of the revenue from their apps, unlike Apple with the iPhone App Store. So, even though Microsoft is more of a commercial business today, they don't want to lose customers to Apple or let Google create a dominant app store for Windows. And that's why Microsoft is trying to reinvigorate user and developer interest around Windows by launching Windows 11. Will you guys be getting Windows 11 at launch or even earlier? Let me know down below. Also, drop a like if you're hoping that Windows 11 will be way better than Windows 8 and 10. And of course, consider joining our Discord community to suggest future video ideas and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.